Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Parent and Family webinar. This is the first in our summer 2025 series. It is called Living at Brown, and it is going to cover everything that you need to know about residential life here on campus. Before we get started, I just wanted to welcome everyone who's joining us today for the first time. We are so glad to welcome you to the Brown family. We're very excited to spend the summer with you, educating you on what to expect when your student arrives on campus. My department is the Department of Parent and Family Engagement, and I am the director. My name is Mikkel St. Germain, and I am here to connect you to resources across campus. If you have any other questions after this webinar, you can always reach me at the email address family@brown.edu. It's very easy to remember. Now, this session is being recorded. We had a lot of questions from folks about, are these webinars available if we can't attend, or if we want to refer back to them? And yes, it takes us a few days to get them posted, but this live recording will be available within a few days on the same website where you registered. For many of you, you submitted questions in advance, and we truly appreciate that. However, we still accept questions during the webinar. We'll try to answer as many as possible that were already asked, and I know our speaker has already incorporated that into her presentation. However, if you have more as we go along, there is a Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen, and you simply enter it there, and we will answer as many as we can. We also have a captioner today for closed captionings. If you need captions, just press the CC button at the bottom of your screen, and those are available to you. Be sure to join us for other webinars coming up. We have the next one is financial aid. It includes staff from student financial aids, student financial services, and health services to talk about insurance forms. We know those forms can be complex and there's a lot to juggle, so we try and provide detailed information for you, and that will be on June 18th. So we hope you can join us for that one. With all that said, I want to get right to the presentation. I do want to make a note that we do try and keep things real high level here for a number of different reasons, but also if you have questions on dining, on international students, on those specific areas, we'll be covering those later in the summer, so we'll hold off on those to that time. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce you to my campus life colleague. This is Dean Brenda Ice, who is the Assistant Vice President for Residential and Community Living. Dean Ice, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming, for those that are viewing live, and for those that will view this later. It is a pleasure to welcome you in my official way of your residential and campus living experience here at Brown. As Mikkel indicated, I've developed a small PowerPoint that I think does kind of a broad stroke of our department, and then answers many of the questions that came in, and even a few that you didn't ask, that over the years that I've been doing this tend to show up for either families on calls like this or students themselves wanting to kind of know more about what it will mean to get to Brown, live at Brown, and be a part of the Brown student experience. And so give me just a second to share the screen, and we will get started with a slide presentation. This will not be the full time we'll spend together, but I do want to at least start with a little bit of overview, and then be able to reserve time at the end for any specific questions or clarity from my presentation. I want to be able to kind of frame this in a way that kind of talks about the do's, the don'ts, and then decisions. And so I'll go in briefly about what we plan to cover. It'll be important for you all to have a broader sense of who we are as a department, and how we are designed and kind of splintered out in our various subgroups to support the overall student experience. And then I will go through some quick little do's, some don'ts, and then decision points that you will make. And then most of the questions that I saw in the the registration list or about key dates, when. So I have some key dates here at the back of our presentation to be able to go through that with you. So without further ado, I think many of you may have already done your homework, either in your decision-making about coming to Brown or after accepting, then starting to kind of peel through the websites and start to get a sense of who the various campus partners are. For us, this is pulled directly from our mission statement and the work that we try to do or strive to do. What I will say is that I won't read this for you, but in a nutshell, our job and our sole purpose of doing the work in residential life is to complement the academic experience. Sorry, excuse me. We recognize that you came to Brown for the academic journey, and we want to ensure that we can support and enhance that and not necessarily compete with. And so we want to make sure that the things we do complement the work that's happening in the classroom, but more importantly, when you're outside of the classroom and spend the most time with our collective team, that you are getting what you need to have the success as you define it for your experience at Brown. Specifically, we have pillars that kind of ground our work. And so while our commitment is to mirror that of the mission of Brown, we want to make sure that we can create environments that are inclusive for all students who live residentially with us, and that we do our part in promoting your overall growth and development in however progression and time period that takes, your overall well-being, and then the support services provided to make sure that you feel like your best self at any portion of your time while staying with us. A quick snapshot of our members of our team. I serve as the leader of our overall residential life program, and then have 4 directors that support me in this. And so you will see here that Scott, Terrence, and Mary are current members, and I'll talk a little bit more about them. And we have a recent departure of our director of residential operations, and so there's a search underway to support and get that person in place, hopefully by the start of our fall semester. When we think about us as a residential life program, I think it's important for folks to have a framing that we are more than what people traditionally believe to be a res life program. And so while fundamentally at its core, most folks recognize res life as the place where you get housing, that is but one component of the work that we do. So our residential operations team is responsible for the housing assignments, the access to our buildings, general maintenance and kind of support, not only with our office, but in campus partners with facilities maintenance and custodial services. We're thinking about forecasting and projecting about enrollment projections to ensure that we have appropriate and adequate space for all students enrolled to live on campus with us. And then here, Brown is, like most universities, loves their acronyms. And so I've listed them here, and there's actually a cheat sheet that our student government has created for incoming students that can decipher some of these for you when we think about the roles that our team plays. But these acronyms for us include assistant directors, associate directors, and FOC will be critical for students living in residence because these are the staff members that work with residential life, that serve as the liaison of facilities to our facilities management team. And so they are constantly in the building wanting to ensure that they can attend to any work orders or issues that are presented, and then work as that kind of connection point with FM to ensure the work gets provided. A keynote to recognize is that residential life is a 24/7 operation. And so we have staff available around the clock to manage both the needed kind of support as well as physical support with lockouts, key loss, and our general information that we can provide. Our residential education program or subunit really is that kind of philosophical approach. And so while you may be living with us and you have a bed, our res ed team is the one working on what we call the head and kind of the holistic support of the students. So there you're going to have support with resources and programming and community engagement. This is the team, not solely responsible, but is instrumental in developing this kind of connection point. the engagement, the way in which your student will arrive, and get them connected to roommates, to other people in the floor, other people in the building, and more broadly with the greater campus, to feel a sense of belonging and connection to Brown. And then be able to transfer that year after year that they're living with us, as they grow and develop. We are distinct in that we also support our Greek program and theme subcommittee. So this is an extension of Res Ed, but because these are specialized interest communities, they have their own kind of director leadership. And so we support all fraternity and sorority life, whether they are a residential Greek letter organization or a non-residential one. And then we have a series of special interest communities that are either program-based, which are student-driven and are linked to identities or a collective interest. And then we also have theme communities, which are shared interests in a particular theme that is a commitment that the university has made. And so when I talked earlier about our kind of pillars of wellness and development, those become some of the thematic programs and opportunities that we offer through our GPT. And then NSPCI is our new student programs and community engagement. And so orientation and transition programs from first year to second year, transfer students, all of those kind of transition programs while you're here at Brown, or housed under our residential life program. So we kind of become the all-in-one. We are with students from the day they arrive until the day they depart. And so it's instrumental for us to kind of have this as a collective group. This makes up my leadership team. And you can see at the end around the last column around joined at Brown, that we are all fairly new in our roles at Brown, but not new to the work that we do. That each of my members, including me, come with an extensive history and experience at various institutions that help broaden the experience that we hope that we can create for your students while they're here with us. And so now we'll move into kind of the heart of our presentation, addressing many of the questions that were raised and some that you're probably thinking about as we're going through today's conversation. And so when I am speaking, most of this is directed at the individual student, but many of it can be parlayed to that of families, guardians, and friends of students who have joined this call or are viewing this later and want to be an active participant in the student experience. And so these are not exhaustive, obviously, there's only 4, but I think it can get you to a place of kind of settling into the fact that you're a college student and coming to Brown in a few short months. So the first is to get engaged. For us, that means a variety of things. So in this area where you haven't yet arrived at campus, engaged for us means reading your emails. Every student is supplied a Brown email, and you probably have already got it activated as you kind of joined and signed on to be a part of our team or our community. And so we encourage you to read all communications that are going to come in. There will be a lot, but at least in the area that I supervise, we've worked to kind of streamline that level of communication, providing you with information that you need at appropriate times and pacing before you actually arrive. Most, if not all of these communications have already started or have additional links that if you aren't the direct recipient, you have access to view those communications that come in. This is a moment where I would also encourage families, friends, and parents to get engaged by actively asking students about the communications that are coming in. Not to necessarily know every detail, but at least to feel like you can be that supportive person behind the scenes as this information is presented. In that same vein, in reviewing the communications, we ask that you pay attention, particularly to dates and deadlines that are included in these communications. There will be important deadlines that we'll want you to adhere to such that you remain on track for the next version of the email or newsletter that comes out, or in some instances around particular our housing questionnaire, that you don't miss an opportunity to be appropriately placed and included in our general selection or general placement process. We're going to encourage you to ask questions. As Mikkel indicated, there are a series of webinars, not just exclusively about living at Brown. And so we ask you to attend as many as you can, or once they have concluded, that you view those videos and then reach out directly to those individuals or emails that are provided and ask the questions. I would rather receive 100 emails of asking questions than to assume that this is how it was because you went here at Brown 10 years ago, or you know someone who went here, or is even a current student. Ask the questions that make sense and are pertinent to you. Our team is more than happy to address those. And then stay present. You aren't at Brown yet, and so enjoy the time that you currently have in the space of which you're located. Spend time with your family and friends. Be present in the last few days of your high school experience for our first years. For any transfer students, being present in kind of transitioning of the friends you made at your previous institution before coming and joining Brown. There will be plenty of time to get engaged with the Brown community, but I'm going to encourage you as a due to stay present in the here and now before you actually join us in a few months. And there wouldn't be a do's list without a few don'ts. And so again, this truly is not exhaustive, but hopefully can help frame a bit about what we ask of you to think about in your preparation and arrival. The first don't is don't forget to complete all of the assigned tasks. So as I mentioned, that our communications will identify appropriate deadlines related to transcripts or health records or housing questionnaires. Please don't forget to complete the tasks assigned to you by those posted deadlines. If you are a person who keeps a calendar, making sure that you identify and place them on there so that you don't forget, or sharing them with family members so that they can be that kind of in-person reminder around these particular dates. Particularly to our housing questionnaire, the one thing we're going to ask you to do is not assume, particularly as we start to share out our roommate information. We're going to ask you to call them, speak with them, talk to them, and ask questions. This might be a moment where I think generationally folks will use snapshots of social media to make assumptions or what they believe to be the persona or the person they might be living with. You won't know that because it is just a snapshot in time. So engage. We're going to give you the contact information of your roommates. Please find a way to connect, have conversations, and ask the questions about living together so that you're that much more prepared. This is both for students and families. Don't overpack. We will provide lots of amenities in this space, including all rooms come equipped with a bed. The mattress is an extra long, and I'll talk a little bit about size later, but it should fit primarily most, if not all, of our students. We do have extra long beds available for those that are a little taller than I happen to be. And so we can provide that upon request. In addition to the bed and mattress, there's also a dresser, a desk chair, and then an armoire is available for students who don't have a built-in closet. And all of these items are available for every student assigned to the space. And so there's not going to be an expectation that there's one desk for every student to share. Our rooms are equipped and designed that if we put 2 students in there, then all those amenities that I described would also be placed in there and done so appropriately for 2 students to live comfortably. That said, if you have the wherewithal and ability to pack light and pick up items once you arrive in Providence, that would be highly recommended. We also recognize that our students are coming from all over, both within the United States and abroad. And so one of the things we do provide is a packing list along with the things that are approved and not approved as part of the housing assignment process. So I won't go into great detail because that information will be shared with you at a later date. And then the last one is, kind of just don't freak out. Like everyone is going to go through the same experience. at this, and maybe not at the same time, but this is everyone's, including our transfer students, their first time at Brown. And so while you may have an idea of what that means, recognize that everyone on that arrival day is going to have a similar kind of moment of, it's my first time. I'm now stepping foot on Brown as an actual Brown student, and to just breathe deeply and often. We will have tons of support available throughout the way, but this is a moment to know that everyone is probably navigating this in the same way. And lastly, before I move into the kind of real in the moment questions, are a few things that I knew would come up for folks. The first is that of our housing questionnaire, and it's already been shared. It went out on June 4th. All students that we know to be enrolled and accepted into Brown received that questionnaire, whether you're a first-time first-year student or a transfer student. If that's not the case, the next slide will provide you with an email address where you can reach out and figure out why you may not have received that communication. The deadline to complete our housing questionnaire is June 24th. This is not a suggestion. We really need students to submit their housing questionnaire by this time period for a couple of reasons. Our staff need time to then review all applications and make sure that they are complete. And then begin to run our process of appropriate roommate matching. We will send reminders for the next few weeks until the application closes. We have a way to check to see who has completed it. So if you've completed the application, you're probably not getting reminders. However, if there are those that are still in limbo, either started it but didn't complete or never opened it, you can expect to receive those reminders from us. Embedded in this housing questionnaire is a collaborative effort we have with our Student Accessibility Services, or SAS, who support housing accommodations along with other accommodations that any student may need, whether it's related to dining, academic, or the like, that they broadly manage all accommodations, but internally for housing, if there are housing specific needs that we need to address, that you will also want to make sure that you complete their priority deadline of the 24th. They do not have a hard deadline because your needs may change after you've already submitted it. But if you have known needs that we probably need to address as a housing accommodation, please make sure that you submit that material through their office. Embedded in our housing questionnaire is a link that takes you to their page for you to learn more about that process. And the documentation to support a housing accommodation. Housing assignments for us will be sent by August 1st, if not sooner. But we wanted to be able to provide you with a framing of when you might anticipate it. In previous iterations, we've been able to send it prior to August 1, but we want to at least give folks about 3 weeks or so of knowledge of their housing assignment and roommates so that they have a pretty good sense of who they're going to be living with and can start to make those plans in preparation. General student move-in is August 27th. And then please note that anyone who is scheduled to participate in a pre-orientation program or is a student athlete may have the ability to arrive earlier. But those dates are subject to finalization. And so I can't say with definitive certainty when a particular athletic program would join. Certainly coaching staff would reach out to the individuals. And then once we send you your housing assignment, in that communication will be a link for early arrival requests. And that's where you can start to identify that you're arriving either for a pre-orientation program or for preseason training for the fall sports. And the last thing I will say is that I mentioned that we are part of, or excuse me, that orientation is part of our residential life program. Please join us on July 30th, where we will host another webinar, specifically around new student orientation. And so while it is under our purview today, I won't spend a lot of time talking about orientation, which is different from our move-in experience. And so move-in is residential life, and our housing ops team where our orientation has its own distinction. And so therefore, we're going to create its own webinar at the end of July. So hopefully you can join us. Decisions you might need to think about. And then we're getting close to the end of my presentation for questions. And these are really aimed at the students who will be joining us in just a few months. And so one of the decisions you want to think about is, who am I? And for us, at least in residential life, that's going to be the responses you give in your questionnaire. But recognize that that's only a snapshot. We like to tell folks a couple of things. When you get the questionnaire, we ask that it be the student filling out the form. Even if you are a minor and we need a parental signature, we still encourage that the student complete the form and then the family member come in at the end and sign off as the guardian. But the questionnaire is meant to represent who you are, not necessarily who you aspire to be. And this will be critical. And so if you are one who's like, this is the moment where I'm going to reinvent myself. I've been an introvert my entire life, but I am going to intentionally be an extrovert. And so you answer your questions accordingly, except that when you get here, you're not quite at that level you thought you would be. Unfortunately, the questionnaire that you provided in that moment, we're going to pair you with other individuals who align with that same type of response. And so truly answer as who you are, not necessarily who you aspire to be. We've got plenty of time to get that. So think realistically. And while we will frame it with those particular questions, we will create other opportunities for you to expand on that and really get to know the roommates through roommate agreements that our community coordinators will provide later on as you arrive. Where am I? In case you didn't know where Brown is located, it's in Providence. But more importantly, that this is a campus that while it has its lovely and historical gates, it's not a gated campus. And so you are part of the city environment. That said, we encourage you to explore beyond the main green and beyond your Brown academic experience and your co-curricular experience. During orientation, we will provide opportunities for a greater exposure to the city of Providence, but we encourage you on your own or with a group of friends to explore and kind of get out and embrace yourself as part of the city environment and experience. Another decision to make is, how will I, and this is really a ... Just remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. And so this idea that you need to be all things or be the perfect student or be prepared for everything is not realistic. And we will provide support along the way to get you where you need to. So how will I adjust? How will I fit in? We have a team already established, hard at work in their development to support you through that. And when did I? Or excuse me, why did I? And so this is typically the question we always ask students, or they're asked at some point during the interview process. Why did you choose Brown? What we're asking you to think here is that you chose Brown for a variety of different reasons, and some are similar to that of your peers, but it could be very different for others. But what we want you to recognize in that decision making is that Brown has been established to serve as your home away from home, not to replace, but to certainly create a support structure where you feel as supported and connected as you do in your home environment as you would here at Brown. And if you ever find that there's a difference between the two, you're going to need to raise your hand or seek or reach out to our team such that we can figure out how to better support you to get to that place where you truly feel like Brown is home. And lastly, here on this last slide are just contact information. I intentionally give this presentation rather than my team for a couple of reasons. One, my team is hard at work doing much of that planning that I discussed. But I recognize that I am the leader of our department. And so I think it's important for students and family members to know that I am approachable and reachable. So please reach out if there are additional questions following this webinar, as we get closer to move-in, or even after the students have arrived and started their academic journey. I remain available and accessible to everyone on this call and viewing this video at a later date in any way that I can assist. I've been at Brown for 4 years now. I have a general and broad sense of our campus partners and resources and things that I don't know the answer to. I'm pretty sure I know another individual who I can connect you with who can support you through that. General inquiries around residential life, specifically your housing questionnaire, amenities in the room, what to pack, what not to pack. I'm going to ask that you direct those to our general email account, res_life@brown.edu. And then for us, particularly in residential life, we know that not all students are as communicative as we would like them to be. So any broad stroke community messages that we share with our residential student population that are applicable to every student or a large enough population is posted on our community message board. And so there, for families who were unaware that our housing questionnaire was live and available to students, you could actually go to this particular link and see the communications that our new students received, including the bold and highlighted areas of deadlines that I mentioned earlier. And then lastly is just key information if you need to know physically where we're located, our mailing address, and contact information that is there. The last part is questions. I want to thank you for your time in sitting with me to kind of go through that overview. I know I provided a lot, and it still may not address all of your questions, but we'll move into kind of some question and answers either that you've queued up here live or that you've already sent in with Mikkel. So Mikkel, I'm ready for the questions.
All right, this is the speed round, Brenda. Let's start with the ones that have come in while you were speaking. A lot of those I think can be grouped together about room selection and roommates. So one of the questions is if they've already filled out the housing questionnaire, can they make changes to it?
Yes, so I'll talk broadly around it. Specifically to that question, yes, you still have the ability to make modifications up until June 24th. And so you can reach out to the Res Life email address and indicate that you'd like to go back and make modifications. A member of our team will update the form such that it's now back open for you to make those changes. So you can make adjustments up until the 24th. After the 24th, it becomes a little bit more complicated, and we're probably not necessarily not going to be supportive, but it will be hard and we'll be less inclined to just immediately make the switch because we'll need to actually process. A little more detail around our housing questionnaire. It's roughly 40 to 50 questions, and while that may feel like a lot, I actually take that back. It might be closer to 30 if you fill out all information. But what we've designed that is not, these questions are not designed to ask what your favorite genre of music is or your color, favorite color, those sorts of things. It really is to get a sense of what you want your living experience to be physically and sometimes philosophically so that we can appropriately match you with roommates. And so we're going to ask about your sleep habits, when you wake up, when you go to sleep, relatively speaking, not an exact hour, but a range. We'll ask about smoking and want to know whether or not we should be appropriately placing you with other smokers, or if you don't mind that an individual smokes. We'll ask about how you want to use the space. Is this going to be a place just to sleep? Do you want this to be a study environment? Do you want this to be a social engagement and where you become kind of the life of the party to invite folks in there? But want to know what type of relationship you ideally would like to have with your roommate. And then there are a few other questions. Based off of the responses that you give, we then have the ability through our automated system to do kind of an automation and kind of determine who is appropriately placed. There's a percentage that we use somewhere in the 70 to 75, that if these match, then these ideally should be our students. But we don't stop there. As much as we can automate our process for all of our incoming students, we then actually have our team review to make sure we got it right. Because the last thing we want to do is just trust the number and then discover that we might have inappropriately placed someone either based off of gender identified in our housing database, or if there were additional information in an open text field that we might need to consider in our final placement. All of that happens after the deadline of June 24th, and certainly before the August 1 deadline. And so that gives us about a month to process this, which you might think is a long time, but I'm also managing other projects the team is managing, vacations and the like. And so that gives us ample time to be able to appropriately place you with the roommate or roommates that you will get.
Excellent. So August 1 is when they find out who their roommate is?
If not sooner. We like to give a broader date, and then that way you all are pleasantly surprised if we get it to you before August 1.
Awesome. If somebody's requesting a single room, do they still need to fill out the housing selection form?
So our housing questionnaire does not allow you to select an individual room or building location. Single rooms are rare in our first year community, and are typically reserved for students who have approved accommodations. And so it is rare that in general placement, a student is given a single with no other kind of accommodation in place. When you fill out that form, if you believe that a single room is needed as part of an accommodation, you'll want to fill out that questionnaire appropriately, still put in your questionnaire and matching, and then submit the housing questionnaire information, the housing accommodation information to SAS. The only reason we ask you is to completely fill it out, because if you're not approved for a SAS accommodation to get the desired outcome, we still need to appropriately place you, and we want to make sure that we have your information on file to plan accordingly.
All right, similar question. Do you have any sense, percentage-wise, of how many rooms will be doubles and how many will be triples?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. What I will say is that it's about a 60-40 split. And so 60% of our first year buildings are doubles and 40% are triples. And so that pretty much will tell you that you're going to have a roommate or more than one. What I can say and stand behind, because I actually did the room assessment and walked the buildings and visited every room, is that if we have indicated that the room is a double, then it appropriately fits the two students and all the amenities that I described comfortably. If we say that it's a triple, it will accommodate the same premise that we have not, in our planning purposes and our occupancy management planning, converted lounges or putting people in kitchens or in tuck-away closets for the sake of meeting an enrollment number. All of our spaces are designed as bedroom spaces and therefore can support students living in those spaces. That said, if every student in that room brings everything they brought from home into that space, that's when it tends to get a little tight. And so when you receive the communication with your housing assignment, that's where you'll start to look at the approved things you can bring, the restricted items, and then a full comprehensive list, including measurements of those amenities that we provide. I do know that one of the questions that came up was, can I get like schematics and floor plans and things of that nature? As a student, you have the ability to visit our website and click on first year selection, and we can provide this as a follow-up to the presentation if you'd like, or reach out to me. But you can actually go to the floor plans. The challenge is that these are they're not to scale. And so it's hard to say that the window is, 6 by what have you. But you can get a sense of the design and layout of the particular space. The one thing I will say, and Brown is true, is that each of our buildings is unique and distinct. And so a double in Archibald Bronson is going to look and feel different than a double in Everett Poland. And that's just simply because of the design of the building. But in each instance, I can still say comfortably 2 students in those spaces will be fine.
All right. We've got a lot of questions about micro fridges and mini fridges. Can you go over that a little bit?
Sure. One of the amenities Brown provides is a micro fridge in every room. And so that is another amenity and certainly something you don't need to purchase or ask for a kind of graduation wish list item. We provide what we call a micro fridge, and these are designed to minimize overall energy capacity in our buildings. And so it is a refrigerator and a microwave attached. And when the refrigerator is in use, the microwave is not functioning and doesn't pull on the same kind of energy and wattage in the particular building. And then when the microwave is in use, the refrigerator is offline. And a microwave on for 2 minutes doesn't really impact what might be refrigerated in a particular space. But we provide that one unit for every room, not for every student.
Right, thank you. We had some questions from athletes or parents of athletes, and I do want to let varsity athlete families know that we will have some separate webinars for you coming up in July. You'll get information on that. Dean, people would like to know, do athletes get paired with athletes, and do they have different move-in dates?
So we do not make the distinction, nor do we place athletes with other athletes. We don't ask the athletic department to give us rosters of the soccer team and we appropriately place. What we do tend to find out is that some student athletes have similar patterns of responses in their housing questionnaires. When they wake, when they go to bed, how they intend to use their space. And it is truly coincidental based off the questionnaire that sometimes student athletes end up with another student athlete as a roommate, but it is not an intentional practice that we create. Nor do we allow students to identify a student that they wish to live with. We are one of few campuses that still believe in the art of truly creating an inclusive environment by not allowing students to pick their roommate in their first year. After that, you have the ability to select to live with whomever you wish to. But in the first year, we want to be able to create an environment where you get exposure to every student and their diverse lived experience in the first year. And so the questionnaires help us get at that. And that way you get to build a broader community and sense of belonging rather than relying on the students you went to high school with or lived in a particular area.
Great, thank you. Let's talk about bathrooms a little bit. Can you describe, are they hall bathrooms? Are they smaller groups using these bathrooms? And can you touch on gender and how that works with bathroom assignments?
Sure. Most of our spaces for first year community members are in what we call double loaded corridors. And so you have the individual room and then bathrooms are shared in the hallway. And in our traditional first year buildings, all are gendered. And so there will be both a gender specific and then a gender neutral. The gender neutral may not be on every floor, but does at least exist in every building. And then there are gendered on the floors. In some instances, in first year areas, we have a few kind of smaller units where they have more localized or central bathroom spaces. And so it feels like a small group of students would use that as opposed to walking down to the end of the hall. But in all instances, there's no kind of private bathroom unless you're assigned to a single room that happens to have a private bathroom. In our upper division units, as you move through your lived experience with us, we then do have more kind of what we call low use bathrooms where the people living in a particular suite or area might share it that isn't more communal and along a hallway.
Thank you. We had a couple of questions from folks who say they got the questionnaire, the housing questionnaire, but they didn't necessarily see the questions you were talking about. Is that I guess I'm just, can you put a little bit more clarity about how many questions they're getting
No
and
problem. And so I looked at the question. When I say 40, that would include if you then dug in and say you wanted to participate in special interest, or that you were interested in gender inclusive housing. Primarily, if you're just interested in general housing and being placed with a roommate, there's probably 15 to 18 questions, and don't hold me to that, but they may not be phrased the way I designed it, but the idea would be, when do you go to bed? When do you rise? Do you smoke? They're not this kind of eloquent prose that I've done in this particular presentation, but they are pretty short and succinct. If you're finding or discovering that you just wish to go back to the questionnaire, by all means, start with the ResLife email. They can clarify any of those particular questions. I made sure that I reviewed the questionnaire so I wasn't speaking off script and having my team come back and saying, no, Brenda, we don't do that. But I'm pretty confident those become the main areas that we focus on in our placement.
thank you. Now we're in Providence, as you mentioned, and the weather changes every day. Today, I think it's 16 rainy. Tomorrow will probably be 90. So we had a question about AC and bringing fans, and are the dorms air conditioned? Can you talk about climate in the dorms?
Yes, so in all of our first year area communities, there's no air conditioning. And I would probably say 90% of our residential spaces, whether it's first year or upper division, do not have air conditioning. These buildings were designed at a period where global warming wasn't necessarily the challenge or concern. And so relatively speaking, it tended years ago to be a little cooler, closer to the start of the academic semester. We recognize over time that that has changed, but we have not positioned or renovated our spaces such that air conditioning has been included. Students can bring a box fan or an oscillating fan. It is one of those things that's not restricted, and so you can bring them. We have a small supply that you can borrow or loan out, but it is really in short supply. And so that is one of the items that we do encourage, that if you, rather than get a micro fridge, get a fan. You cannot, however, purchase your own air conditioner. While we don't have them, we also restrict you from purchasing one. Air conditioning, either floor or window units, are not something we allow students to bring in unless it is already an approved accommodation. And then there's a separate process that we go through with those particular students and families.
And a companion question, what about heating? When do they turn the heat on?
Yes. So that is managed by one of our campus partners in facilities management, and it is a universal turn on, turn off. And so it's usually based off of a period of time where the weather consistently stays at a lower temperature or starts to drop. And once they know that it's consistently at that temperature, that's when heat kicks on. So there's not a date I can say every year that come October 1, we turn on heat. It adjusts. And so there's a team of professionals who manage and regulate that. And once they know that there's a consistency with the temperature and the weather, then we get the schedule of when buildings will start to turn over to heat. And then subsequently, when we know that the weather will break and we start to have warmer conditions, they also do that same adjustment and shift where the heat is turned off. That doesn't mean AC is turned off, but at least, or turned on. It does, however, mean that the heat element is turned off on campus.
Weather in New England is tricky.
Yes.
How about natural lighting? Do all rooms have at least one window?
Absolutely. And so it is designed, one of the one things that we have been thinking about when we did our room inspection and kind of walk through is that there are some locations that are what we would consider subterranean. So they might be on a basement level. What we have asked facilities to do is to still maintain that area surrounding it so that it's not blocked either by bushes and trees and that sort of thing, so they can still feel this kind of natural light coming through all of those spaces.
Great, thank you. An important topic about roommate conflict. How is that handled? How is it supported by your team? And if necessary, can people make changes to their roommate assignment?
So the first is to answer the questionnaire as accurately as you can, and we do our best to then do that placement. Then once students arrive, what we ask is our community coordinators, which is Brown's version of an RA, will engage with roommates and do an additional roommate agreement. And that's where you actually do get to talk more broadly about when you plan to waive the use of your space. You can ask about color and favorite music and whether or not you want to go to the dining hall, if there are things that, you know, roommates need to know that didn't rise to an accommodation request, but certainly might want to be privy to as someone sharing the space with. That's where those conversations take place. That agreement is signed by all roommates, and the CC holds on to it or shares it with our office, such that when a conflict is presented, the first thing we do is go back to the agreement to be like, did we discuss this? Do we need to add this to the agreement? Maybe we didn't think of all the things. Our first attempt is, or our first option is always to try to mediate and figure out if we can find a solution. I'm not sure if any of you have visited campus, but what I can tell you is I do not have a magical building that sits empty year-round for us to make adjustments if we run into roommate conflicts. And so we are actively trying to get students to be in a space where they can engage in conversation. If, however, we find that there is no more movement in that mediation and that the conflict may be too great to overcome in continued conversation, we can create moments where there might be a room swap with other members on the floor or in another building. This will become critical as you start to think about engagement with other students beyond your roommate or your building, that you may discover you made a friend in your orientation group. And as you then discover there might be some conflicts with a roommate, or you just find yourself wanting to live with that individual. After our honeymoon period, we do have a 2-week freeze where no students can request a room change unless it truly is a life safety matter. That's where you could entertain and be like, I just think the person I met in my Bruno group is probably better aligned with me, and we would like to make the request. Assuming that the other parties involved are fine with that, we can usually make kind of those mutual roommate exchanges happen.
Great, thank you. We're getting close to time, so I'm going to try and run through a few more of these. How often are bathrooms cleaned?
We, with our custodial staff, have a daily cleaning in residential spaces and then once on the weekends. And they have now created in the restrooms a QR code. And so if you happen to be a student who walks into the space and it doesn't appear like it's been cleaned or attended, that QR code goes directly to our service response team, where you can actually put in an immediate request and or inquiry about when it will be cleaned, or to send someone back to the space if it's not cleaned.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have storage and shipping questions for students as they're coming in this year. Can they ship things in advance of moving in? And at the end of the year, is there a place for them to store belongings?
Yes. So shortly after we send our housing assignment information, that's a trigger to some of our other campus partners to start their communication, including mail services. They will then send information around their mailbox information. Some of that will already be pre-located on your housing profile, so you know your mailing address, but then mail services will send subsequent communications about how to receive mail, and then even information around how to receive shipments in advance. They do not permit you to share or ship anything at least 1 week. I think it might be 1 week, it might be down to days prior to your actual arrival. Otherwise, their mailroom is just packed to the brim if we didn't kind of put some restraints around when you could actually pre-ship. Wait for that communication, because they will actually give you how many packages they have the ability to receive and the dates and times of when they will be available and open on move-in day for you to be able to come in and pick up those items. For storage after your first year, we have entered into a partnership with 2 local companies that we endorse and support. And so it's available on our website now if you want to look at, but as we get closer to the closing of the spring semester, we provide that information to students so they can do outreach to these particular vendors to store their items over the summer. The beauty of this program is that they tend to send boxes in advance, students package and label appropriately, and then leave them in the room, and then the vendor comes in and picks them up and stores them, and then makes arrangements for drop off when they return.
Great, thank you. Transfer student had a question about, are they placed with first year students, new students coming in, or are they placed with the year that they're graduating?
It's a combination of either with their class year or with another transfer student. We do not have an exclusive transfer student population or housing, but we do try to at least congregate as many as we can in a particular location without calling it distinctively transfer student housing.
Okay, and I think I might have gotten to the bottom of the question about the questionnaire. Is there a difference between the housing application and the housing questionnaire?
No, they're both the same.
Okay.
It might be a different distinction in language. There is a distinction between the housing accommodations request and that of our housing questionnaire. Ours is specifically to ensure that we can pair and room you appropriately. If you know that there are known accommodations that the university needs to be aware of, even independent of housing, we encourage you to work through SAS to have that documented. I always tell students it's better to have it and not need it than to not have it and need it in a particular pinch or crisis.
And we're going to email you if the student, if they have not filled it appropriately or they're missing something.
Absolutely. You will receive reminders. If you've never opened it, you're going to get a reminder to do so. If you've started it but not completed, you'll get that communication. And those of you that have completed it and wish to have it reopened now after this conversation, or as things change before the 24th, email us at ResLife, and we can reopen that application for you.
Okay, the last one's going to be an easy one. Do students have to bring quarters for laundry?
Oh my goodness, how could I forget laundry? Laundry at Brown is complimentary, so there's no direct cost to the students to pay for laundry. We have laundry rooms in every facility. And right now, without much complaint, enough machines to support the students living in a particular building. Enough washers and dryers, and then in each of the buildings, at least an accessible one for students in those particular spaces. So they just simply walk up to the machine, load appropriately, and press start. We do have a company and with instructions in our spaces that actually provide you with additional mobile access for you to be able to scan the machine and submit a service request if the machine is down, or to be able to track if a particular machine is open so that you would know in advance of actually hauling your laundry to the particular laundry room.
Okay, I'm going to give you the final word so you can give the top tips or close out for our families. But in the meantime, I'm also going to drop a survey link into the chat for everyone to provide your feedback. We love to hear from you so we can make these webinars as useful to you as possible and improve the services we're providing to you. Dean Ice, thank you so much for your participation today. And let me leave you with the final word.
Reading is fundamental, folks. So read the communications that are going to come through. We've been very intentional to ensure that the communication we provide is not completely exhaustive, but enough information for you to know in the moment that you're in. You'll receive additional information about arrival, assignments, around orientation. So read thoughtfully. And then if there's ever a moment of questioning what a particular statement or comment is made in those communications, reach out to the appropriate person or department that sent you that communication. We'd rather you ask the question now than make assumptions before your arrival and create an additional moment of anxiety or frenzy of uncertainty.
All right. Well, if we didn't get to your question, please send them to res_life@brown.edu or family@brown.edu if it's not Res Life related. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dean Ice, and our media services and captioner. And have a great rest of your day, everyone in the Brown community. Take care.